All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Claimed. I have an amazing woman here with me today. Her name is Julie, and she's calling from Georgetown, Texas. And she has been a member, a very successful member, I should say, of the Claimed program. Welcome, Julie. And I'm so excited that you decided to join us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna.
Yeah, thank you. And you're quite brave, Julie, because to do this requires courage, I should say. And I know you've been listening and watching my interviews with other women. And I always say, it takes a lot of courage to come out there and share your story. So I'm deeply grateful for you being able to show up. And I know the listeners are as well. And I also know that you have been a podcast listener. You told me for about 2 years. So you're not, the new kid on the block. And so, yeah, let's begin, I guess, by chatting about your story. And what we're going to start with, I'm curious if you can remember, because I know you've been in the program for quite some time and you've been really digging into this. And by now, I would consider you as the graduate of the Claimed program, but I know you're still showing up and on the calls and everything, but you really truly, just like every woman who I invite on the call, you embody those Claimed values. And I know that your life shifted and transformed as a result of going through the Claimed program. But I'll let you talk about that. So let's start with you. If you can rewind to the time when you just found out about my work, I'm curious, what was your situation? How did you actually come upon my work and what we do here in Claimed?
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. So I found your podcast through, I believe it was a Facebook ad. And at the time I was alone with my 2 kids. My ex-husband had walked out and, him and I were kind of trying to work things out. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but I knew at the time that he left, I knew that there was something, fundamentally wrong in our relationship. I was kind of leading a lot of the things in the household, and I felt like I didn't have any support. And so I don't even remember what I was Googling. I was probably looking up like how to fix your relationship or how to make him, listen to you or something silly like that.
Yeah.
And I think it like popped up on my Facebook as an ad, and it was your 1 hour your 1 hour training. And I said, yes, I'm going to listen to this. And then, got to know you a little bit. I feel like I took like feverish notes during that 1 hour and was trying to like implement things. And I had actually come from kind of this mindset of being able to do everything on my own. And so after about a year of doing research on your program, listening to the podcast, it took me a whole year to sign up for my discovery call,
Wow.
which, I know some women are like that and other ones, jump right into it.
Can I just ask you about this?
Yeah.
Why did it take you a whole year? What was about it that did you need more information to get to know me and the work a little bit better? Did you need more kind of results from other women? Because you're right. I mean, there's a whole, like we've got women who watch that same, who read that same ad on Facebook, watch the webinar, they're on the discovery call today and they're signing up today. Like we've got women who sign up within 24 hours, but then we also have women like you who need more time. So I'm just curious if you can tell me a little bit more about what was that for you? And then what was the moment when you're like, okay, I'm ready to sign up for my call?
Yeah. So at the time when I found you, I was doing actually this is going to sound ridiculous, but like 4 different healing programs already. And
Okay.
so I was doing a separate program with a nurse practitioner friend of mine who does holistic medicine. And I was seeing like 3 different, like 1 coach and 2 different, just general people that we were doing counseling. And so, I think at that time I was just overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also just naturally, I guess, slow to kind of make a decision. And I wanted to get to know you more, honestly. And I wanted to make sure that it was worth the commitment. I already knew that it was probably going to be a decent monetary commitment. So I wanted to be ready when I did do my discovery call. And I'm trying to think what made me sign up. Oh, I remember. So at the end of the year, you offered like $1,000 off for the first 10 ladies.
Yes, yes. This was almost a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yep,
So you're one of
exactly.
them.
And so I thought, yeah. And then I kept getting your emails that were like 5 spaces left and 3 spaces left. And I was like, oh man, like if I'm going to do it, and I'm very fiscally responsible as well. So obviously I was waiting for a deal. I liked a deal. And so I thought, man, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to, I have to go all in. And I really felt like January, because my divorce was going to be finalized, it was just a good ending to that chapter of my life and kind of a beginning to my next chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And so here you are on the discovery call with Barbara almost a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me a little bit more about, well, actually, before we talk about the discovery call, maybe you can talk a little bit about having that context that you were working with 4 different people. And I know this is quite common, women who enter the client program. This is not their first rodeo for some it is, but I'd say the majority of women, they have done personal growth for quite a bit. Some of them have been in therapy for years and things like that. So because you're coming from that kind of background, I'm curious, because you were working with these people, follow me for a year. What really resonated with you in the work, and what kept you, I guess, being pulled into the work and resonating with you, and what made you, I guess, make the decision and not, let's say, continue with the natural, you said, holistic medicine or the coach or the counseling, and really go towards that path?
Yeah. So, I'm super grateful for everything that those counselors and those providers had to offer me. And they got me a certain ways down the path, but I still carried like a ton of tension in my shoulders, my neck. I was having a lot of like liver pain and other things. And I knew that the healing that I needed wasn't outside of me necessarily. It was something that needed to come from within. I was still carrying a lot of trauma from my relationship and even from my childhood that none of those other methods really even touched on. It was all like head thinking, like, I know that I should feel this way. I know that I'm supported. I know that I'm loved. But in my heart, I didn't really feel supported and loved. And I remember as I listened to the podcast, and I'm just going to be honest, the first thing I did, so I didn't really believe that men told the truth or that there was good men out there. And so the first thing I did, you had a series of like 20 men on your Girls Skill podcast. I don't know if you remember this. They were kind of all in a row. So the first thing I did was downloaded all of those podcasts, and I just listened to them over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, if these men are on this podcast, they are out there. But at the time, I didn't feel worthy of that caliber of men, I guess. And so I knew I had a lot of internal things that needed to change. And I had already, like you said, I had already tried all of the counseling, and I had even done EMDR therapy. And so I felt like your program was the best fit for me. And then obviously you talk about the community of women, and they're successful, they're driven, they've kind of done things all on their own. I'm like, that is me.
Yeah.
That is me. But I don't know how to get me from this point that I'm at to where I want to be, which is attracting those successful men.
Yeah, got it. So in summary, it was the fact that you were, and I love that you're saying this, Julie, because that's exactly what, as you know, and that's why you're here, we do in the program. And I see this a lot in the personal growth space and in the therapy. And all these modalities are obviously amazing. And all of them, I truly believe, that are doing their part. However, there is that missing piece, which is, I call it, or we call it, the embodiment piece, where you're right? So when you approach personal growth from a very head-based, intellectual thought process, rationalization, things like that, of course you look around and you're like, well, yes, I have the love and I have the support and I have all of that. And you might even be telling yourself that I am worthy of, I see these comments all the time from women. I am great. I am the full package. I believe, like one of my girlfriends even told me, a few weeks ago. She's still looking for a partner. She's like, but I believe that men are great, but they're amazing, and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you tell yourself. But what is the reality that we see? And what are the kinds of men are you attracting in your life? That is actually the truth that you believe deep down inside, because men are our mirrors. And so I love the fact that you're saying that, yeah, all these things are great and I understand it, but I didn't feel like I was loved or supported or that I could trust men or whatever. So from here on, you sign up for your discovery call. You jump on the promotion and the deal, which we don't do very often, by the way. So if you ever get one of those, you should totally jump on board. And so, yeah, what happened on the discovery call, Julie, and what made you sign up for the program?
Yeah, so Barbara was amazing. I felt like I was talking to like an old girlfriend, like, and the thing that really came across for me was she just was calm. She was like, I've been where you were. I've worked through my stuff and here's where I am today, and this is kind of what we have to offer. And there was no like pressure to sign up, because I've actually been involved in other programs where there was like a lot of pressure. Like you had to sign up within 8 hours or the price goes up or whatever. And so I really appreciated just basically being able to take the space if I needed it in order to make that decision without any pressure. And by that time I was already ready.
Right.
I already knew. I mean, I think I gave her my credit card, like same call. So yeah, after a year of doing my research, I kind of was like, okay, I know this is a right fit.
Yeah, great. And so you are joining the program, and obviously there's so many things we could talk about there, Julie, with every single woman, right? But I'm curious, if you were to think about your biggest 2 to 3 kind of aha moments and what really moved the needle for you and to have the transformation that you wanted, what were these 2, 3 aha moments?
So probably the biggest one for me was realizing that everything I wanted was actually inside of myself. And obviously that was like towards the end of the program, and the way you have it set up is so beautiful. I mean, you walk you through like your childhood and your current relationships. And I also really loved the activity where we go back and we look at like patterns with men. That was a huge eye opener, because even though the men that I had dated, which was very few, I had the exact same pattern and I couldn't see it until it was in front of my face, kind of staring me in the face. And so, which was nice for me, because then I was like, okay, I realize it has nothing to do with the men. It has everything to do with me. Like something inside of me is attracting this same pattern. And I was the common denominator between the 3 or 4, I think it was 3, that I originally did, and, yeah, I would say that's my biggest one. I mean, there was a lot of little things that happened along the way, but, just realizing that I had the power to give myself everything I was looking for. And then from that place, attract, my committed masculine man. That was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to all the women listening, I'm just thinking, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the women listening and hearing you say that. Well, let me ask you, think about yourself a year ago. And if you were listening to one of these interviews, which I know that you probably were, when a woman would say something like this, like, I realized that everything I wanted was inside of myself, has nothing to do with the men. I was the common denominator. What do you think would be the question that they would be asking? Would they be asking you, I'm thinking like, how did you realize that? What were like the practices that you did? Or what do you think you would be asking a woman who actually said that?
Definitely how. It's like, especially because a year ago, I mean, I was always in my head. I didn't even know what it meant to be living from like a heart space or even connected to my body. I was living in pain in my shoulders and my neck, which I know a lot of women struggle with. My health was being affected, and yeah, definitely the how.
So let's talk about
because
the how.
it is.
What is the how,
Yeah.
Julie? How were you able to? Because I know right now. I mean, did you want to share? So let's talk first about the result and where you're at now, and then we'll talk about the how. So where are you at now after doing this work?
Yeah. So I recently was claimed by a very committed masculine
So
man.
claimed
And so
means what?
he asked me to be exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's just an amazing person. And he was actually a setup from a friend of ours. And I mean, he knew almost immediately he wanted to be with me, but I wasn't there yet. I was still kind of on my journey of wanting to date, kind of wanting to see what was out there. And so we spent, I'm trying to think, from our first date in June and then just recently was claimed within the last few weeks, almost 4 months just kind of dating and getting to know one another. And I was funneling, I had several different men in my funnel that I was actively dating. But obviously over time, it's like, I can trust this man. He shows up for me, not only me, but my children as well, which was super important. Especially, being a single mom with 2 kids, a lot of guys didn't understand my, previous engagements with my children and that my kids will always come first after myself. So, yeah, it was, now I'm in a committed relationship. I mean, he's got the girls right now, he's hanging out with them and
Oh.
they love him. And yeah,
Has he?
so
Does he have children
it's
of his own or
great.
no?
He does.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was another thing was most of the guys I was dating, some of them were dads, but he was the first one to want to be actively involved in the girls. Like he wanted to be around, he wanted to come around, he wanted to help with the food. And, I mean, I can't even tell you. Like if I just mentioned that my lawn needed to be mowed, it would be done. I didn't have to ask. He would bring a lawnmower over and cut my grass while I was at
The
work.
true
So it
protector,
was,
provider. Yeah, it's so
yeah.
important. Like when you have children, obviously, I haven't been in that situation of being a single mother, but obviously, I am a mother and I have two. So when you're dating someone and you do have children, it's, they're here. Obviously, you can't ignore them. And they do come, first to you, then the children, and then the men, right? So it has to be the right fit in that as well. Because, when you're single and there's no kids, obviously, that's not even a factor. But through that, that's also kind of a filter in terms of how much does he want to be involved, and you're seeing this man with your children and all of that. So yeah. Okay. So you're claimed now. Congratulations. And I know this has been quite a journey. This man had to kind of hunt you down
Yeah.
and really persist. And I think your story, Julie, is one of the. I mean, String was the same. And I always say, a committed masculine man who wants to be with you, he will persist. And that is the quality that, in the beginning you're like, "Ooh, I don't know," because I know it was like I don't know kind of a scenario, right? Because String, my husband, was a hell no. He actually was a hell no. It's not even I don't know. He was a hell no in the beginning, but because I practiced what I'm teaching in the program and everything about giving men chances, allowing men to pursue in court, because in different scenarios, then you really see his character develop and evolve and really show you who he truly is. Because after 3 days, that's why I'm saying at least 3 to 5 dates, so that not to get into a relationship just to decide whether you want to keep dating this man. At least 3 to 5 dates, and then in the period of dating, you're really allowing him to show up for you in many different ways. And you did all the right things, Julie. And I know a lot of women had questions for you in the program. We're like, how did you do that? How did he not fall off? And here's an example where, and String tells me this all the time, because I asked him a few times, would you be intimidated? Because your man, he knew you were dating other people, I'm assuming, right? He knew you were, not because, I don't know, you were like sleeping around or whatever, because you are an amazing woman, you are the prize, and you want to date and you want to see what's out there. And String told me, yeah, I wouldn't be intimidated by other men. In fact, that would further motivate me to pursue and to court and to like hunt you down, so to say, as my woman. And so here you are having this amazing man with this amazing relationship. So let's talk about the how, Julie. How did you get from a place of, because you said, you were alone with 2 kids and you were leading the household. You felt like you had no support. You felt like you had to do everything on your own. And I also really appreciate the fact that you tell your story in terms of there was tension in my body, which I guess you were learning through maybe following my work and the embodiment of it. And you said your health was also compromised. So how did you get from that to, and not trusting men or not believing that great men are out there and not feeling worthy? How did you get to actually date multiple men at a time and allow this amazing man to claim you and be where you're at? How would you talk about the how?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of a rule follower in certain respects, and I just went through step by step through your program. I really had to be honest with myself and take a really hard look at my patterns and also do a lot of healing with my dad and my mom and my parents and, people that had really hurt me in my life. And so, I had one goal in 2022. It was to trust, I think, how many men? Hold on. I think it was 3 men or
Oh,
maybe
that's such
2.
a good goal.
Let me
Trust
look.
3 men.
I think it was trust 2 men because 3 felt
Wow.
like too many and 1 didn't feel like enough. And I already had an idea of like who the one man was, which is my best girlfriend here. It's her husband, and watching him and how he treats his children and his wife. And so really leaning into that friendship, that was one of them. Because I didn't actually even start dating until May 1st. So I took, some time in between there to really kind of get my heart in a right place, and really be able to open up and be authentic with the men when they would ask me out on dates. Because I wanted to show up as who I truly was so that they had an idea of who I am, and then they can also make an informed decision. So I really got past that fear of, I think you call it a scarcity mindset. So like not having enough men, not having good men, men, there's only one, like if I find one man, that's it, if I don't get him. And honestly, like, I mean, just so many men showed up. And even though I think I went on like 24 dates in the month of May, and it was only while my ex-husband had the girls. So you can do the math on that. But a lot of those men, I mean, I really just wanted to date all the different, types of guys out there. I wanted to see what was out there. And, and what I learned through that was even if it was a no for both of us at the end of the date, we could still thank each other for our time and move on. It just wasn't a great fit. And it didn't have to be like all of this pressure of like, oh, I must find the right guy. Like, because I was already giving myself what I needed, which was security, support, love to myself. So how did I get to there? I'm trying to think how I'd answer that. I mean, your program does such a great job, but you really do have to put in the work. You have to show up for yourself every day and prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
So following your program, going through step by step. I was a little late on the boudoir shoot. I didn't do that till about July. But, that was just like unraveling like a little bits at a time. I mean, my heart was so protected from my past marriage, that it took time. And the guy that I'm with now, he just had to unravel that little bit at a time.
Yeah. And so how do you feel now, Julie, in this about yourself, first of all? Tell us about how do you feel in the body, like those physical sensations, and then in the relationship.
So now, oh man, I mean, I'm like a totally different person. If you had met me a year ago and you saw me now, I mean, I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. I know exactly kind of my trajectory for the future. I'm not looking outside myself anymore for validation, for love, for support. I mean, and the funny thing is when I stopped looking outside of myself, they all started showing up. So even like my work relationships got better, my ease with my patients at my work, at my job, the interactions with them got more authentic, more real. And, even they started sharing things with me that, maybe they felt too vulnerable to share with other providers. So it's been a beautiful, beautiful thing. I mean, obviously it's a never ending process. There's always more work to do. And actually my relationship now, it's interesting. It's so supportive and it's such a safe space that I can really truly be who I am, and he can hold that space for me to kind of reveal like my deepest vulnerabilities. So it's almost like we're still going through like a healing process there, both of us.
Can you perhaps give an example of maybe a recent situation where, because I think like first of all, what you said, when I stopped looking outside of myself, they started showing up. This is such a beautiful realization, and my hope is that with the program, and I see this is the realization that women come to, right? Because I think most people look for answers outside where all of the answers are already inside. You perhaps just need a guide or a process to take you through it, right? And I am here as a guide and as a coach, and here's this whole process, but you have to walk it, right? Yes, we'll be holding your hand and, being there for you anytime you need, but you have to walk it. There's no one else who can walk it for you. And yeah, when you said I can truly be who I am with this man, I think, I deeply resonate with that, and I feel the same in my relationship. And this is, I think, one of the primary needs of the feminine. And so, women who are listening, I know they all want that. We all want and crave that. And so, yeah, I'm just curious if you have in mind a situation where that's an example of that.
Like feeling fully heard and fully seen.
Like when you say, I can truly be who I am in this relationship, is there anything that comes to mind as a specific example where, that showcases that?
So, I mean, so many things. I'll just mention two, just because these are like major, major things. So, number one was, like I said, I mean, he knew already probably in August that he wanted to be with me. He asked me multiple times to be exclusive. And it took me so long in his mind, for me to make a decision. But I mean, I had such a strong funnel. I had built really good relationships with the guys that I was currently dating, including him. And we obviously, it did come up lots of times because he would bring it up. Are you ready to be exclusive? I really, I'm falling for you. I really want to be with you. And I think the best example is I felt comfortable. Like the way I described it to the ladies in the program is his vessel. Like when I imagined it during, my meditative flow, his vessel was big enough to handle all of me, which included, even the negative things. Like, I'm not there yet with you. That can be really difficult for someone to sit with. And he did, I'm not trying to say it was easy for him, because men, like, that's their nature. They want a woman. They want their woman. And he knew I was his woman, period. And, he was able to take that and sit with it. And he needed time and space as well with that. But like I said, he just continued to show up. And I told him, I said, this isn't a no, but this is a not yet. And we had to have a couple of kind of difficult conversations. But I never felt threatened. He never threatened to leave me or to walk away. He said eventually, obviously, yes. Like, you do reach a point where it's like, okay, we're at this point in the relationship. We have to make a decision. But at that point, we had only gone out on maybe 6 or 7 dates. So I take some time. I had a lot of trauma with my ex. And so it just took me a while. And I just explained it from a really honest place inside myself. And, it was a hard conversation. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. You have to have hard conversations. But when you're coming from a place of being sure inside of yourself, then those hard conversations become a lot easier.
This is such a beautiful story, Julian. There's so many powerful lessons here. First of all, I think it's such a pattern interrupt when, as a woman, you actually say, I'm not sure yet, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
not ready. Because I think most women who find, you knew he's a great guy. And so,
Mm-hmm.
why is this a pattern interrupt? Because what I see, like the issue with a lot of women is like they find that guy. First of all, they like lead the whole dynamic and whatever, don't even allow him to pursue them. But then once they find like, oh my God, for a guy to be like, let's get into a relationship, like, hell yes. So a lot of women jump into a relationship without even, first of all, doing it properly from the beginning, from having a funnel, having dates, having that abundance mindset, dating multiple men at a time, and then choosing and allowing yourself the time. And I mean, sometimes, yes, it does
Mm-hmm.
happen that, yes, this is a yes, let's go. But what I see in most women, they just jump into it too quickly because they're like, oh, here's the one guy, I got to jump into it. And then here's where down the line, a lot of the problems start to happen because that decision, I'm not saying all the time, but a lot of the times is not aligned with actually who you are, what you like. We haven't done that personal growth, right? And jumped in, went into our bodies, really like, who am I? What do I want in a man? What's important, right? So that alignment with you, when you said it's not even about the man, it's about you. And so
Mm-hmm.
even in that you actually allowed yourself the luxury of saying not yet. And obviously, within the not yet, there's a lot of risk because this man could have walked away. And you assume that risk because you, by going through the process, being in the program, you have embodied that idea that there's plenty of great men around, right? There's no rush. I'm in my body. I'm respecting my feelings. And so with that, you also attracted this man who, as you said, was able to take that and be with it and see with it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that I think like from the masculine perspective, it's that whole dance of she's not ready yet. That's okay. That's like I'm feeling that
Mm-hmm.
she's getting there. And in that moment, an insecure man would have taken it personally or whatever and say, you know what? I'm out of here, and would have moved on. So this is also, I'm not saying every woman should do that because yes, there's certain situations where he asks you and you say yes. But in your case, that wasn't the case. And he was just, as you talk about this with me and String, it was actually the same. Like, I think my story, but my story with String, as I said, it was a hell no. Our first sex was terrible. I was like, I think he even let me pay for half of the hotel where that terrible sex happened. I was like, this is just insane. Like this, I never want to see this guy again. I took out my phone, I recorded a message to my girlfriend and said, I thought men at 40 know what they're doing in bed. Apparently not. And so, and then there was another instance after that where we went to the bar and like, he didn't get me a drink and whatever. And I was like, like, I'm freaking done with this. Like, not like you were like, maybe not ready yet. I just took him out of the bar and I said, stop wasting your time on me because it's not going anywhere. And then I just left. you know but for some
Wow.
reason, like, I don't know, when I asked him about this, he was like, oh, I just thought that like you were not in the mood that night or something like that. And then he just kept showing like complete. I find it fascinating how men sometimes are completely oblivious to the fact that how men look in the mirror and they have this a bit of belly, but what they do is like they suck it in. They're like, oh yeah, this six pack isn't looking too bad. Like, I still got it. And then they go. While women, when we look into the mirror, we distort everything 40% in the negative. And so it's just so fascinating how men can just do it. They deal with rejection, that they have experience with rejection. And so they don't take no for an answer. Well, the healthy masculine ones, right? And so they keep pursuing. That's what happened with me in stream. Like, how did I get from like being a complete hell no to like stop wasting your time on me to, a few weeks down the line, some things happened and he was persistent and whatever, and he really showed up for me. And then that dynamic turned into like the most amazing sex of my life. And then,
Mm.
marrying this guy, being proposed to 9 months later and having children. Like, it's just amazing, right? Incredible how things happen. But that's because I just allowed myself to be in that space, and I was feeling into his vessel, as you call it. So,
Mm-hmm.
Julie, I'm, amazing transformation. I'm so proud of you and that the fact that you did the work and you were showing up. And so, I guess the last question for you here is for all of the women listening. And so, let's say a woman who is currently where you were at the time that you started to, let's say, follow me or get into all this work, what would you tell her? What if she's kind of on the sidelines, or she still kind of thinks that she needs to do her research or whatever? Why would you encourage her to sign up for a discovery call and perhaps even join the program?
Oh man. I just feel like we're so used to women, definitely just being in our masculine all the time, and like coming from a headspace and pushing and striving, and, not being able to take a rest and relax into that secure presence. And this program to me is the most comprehensive program to really get down to the depths of why did that happen? How did we get from that girl who just wants to pick flowers and, twirl around in fields and play all day, to this woman that's constantly striving in everything, striving in work, striving in relationships, forcing things to make it happen. Your program, from everything that I saw and all the research I did, it wasn't about like, say the right thing. It was more like, no, learn to love yourself, learn who you are as a woman, learn, your feminine flavor. You like to talk about it, and come from there. And then that'll start drawing in the right kinds of guys. So that's what I would say is, stop looking. Like, here it is. There's so many out there. And I had also followed a lot of other podcasters and YouTubers and all that. So, and there are benefits to some of those things, but the real work is on yourself. So,
yeah. And that's, one of my struggles with marketing, so to say, because I know that this is what women are looking for. As you said, you were looking for how to get him to do this or what to say. What is, these women who come on our coaching calls, oh, I love them so much, but they're so new, so fresh. And they come on and, what should I reply to this text message, right? Because that's the first thing that, like, you think about. And I have so much, not trouble with that, but because I'm seeing that and I'm like, that is not the end. That is not the right question to ask. That is not the right thing to search for. But of course, I see this as a coach. And when I think about, where you were, or all the women who are looking for an answer, of course, unless, you've been doing this work and digging deep and whatever, you're just coming out there on YouTube or whatever, and you're searching for, here's the guy, what do I say, right? So I have a lot of trouble with that. Like, I got to create a video telling women what to say, but then turn it around to actually be like, it's not about that. It's about this, and this is why it's important. So,
and that was me too. I honestly thought, like, if I just find the right guy, if I find the right guy, it'll make my life so much easier.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about finding the right guy. It was about being the right woman to kind of attract that caliber of man, if that makes any sense.
Wow. So. I got to write this down. Super powerful. It wasn't about the right guy. It's about being the right woman. For yourself, that attracts.
For myself,
right.
Exactly. And the thing is, even like the way I mothered changed. It literally changed my life. It changed my relationship with my ex, which was very, very stressful. And always like, we were both feeding into this really negative bucket constantly. We were just like, still at each other's throats and still kind of in that negative pattern. And he certainly didn't change. I just decided one day that I wasn't going to continue that, and I just didn't. And then the whole relationship with him changed. So it didn't matter what he did. The only thing that mattered was the way I showed up to that relationship, and that relationship changed.
So how did it, tell me about, because I'm curious, how did your motherhood change? Like, how are you showing up now in your motherhood, and how, because, that relationship with an ex, with the father of your children is really important, especially when there's a new man involved. So I'm curious about those two dynamics. How did that change, and how is it now?
So at that time, before I started your program, I was ending the divorce. So it obviously was a super stressful time in my life. And I was showing up with that kind of stress, all that tension I was holding in my body, I was taking it out on my kids. And I remember telling them, like, you know what, mommy just needs a timeout. And I would have to take myself away from the situation and like go to my bedroom so that I could get a little space between us. And now, my capacity for them is just so much bigger. Like my patience is better. I'm able to kind of see their little emotional things that they have and meet them where they are instead of trying to change them or mold them and trying to say, please don't feel that because that makes me uncomfortable. It's like I can sit with all those great big kid-sized feelings. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing in your program specifically on that, but it was just doing that inner work. Just like I said, it totally changed my life.
Yeah, because what you're doing is, and how old are your kids, Julie?
They're 5 and 7.
Yeah, because when you're working on developing that capacity for you to actually be present with your sensations, that's what we're doing, right? Developing that capacity to just sit with yourself and be with what's happening in your body. And, I'm a mother, I'm not like there's tantrums going on every day. You're able to, and I deeply resonate with what you're saying because, and obviously, I mean, oh my God, String and I talk a lot about being a single mother is like the craziest thing. I don't even know how you do it, but obviously you do it because you just have to do it. But when that capacity to feel, when you are able to hold all of those negative, positive, whatever that is sensations and just be with them, because most people are not able to do that, then you're developing the capacity to actually hold that for anyone and especially for your kids, because they just need to know that the adult in their life can handle that. And when they feel secure in that, I believe that that's what secure attachment really is, then they can just express whatever emotions they are, but we can only get comfortable with that. Like now, I know my 4-year-old, I still feel the frustration, but because I'm able to be with my own emotions in a very positive and create that positive relationship with it, like no judgment, I'm feeling what I'm feeling, right? And I'm looking at her, I'm like, oh, you're feeling what you're feeling, right? And I can hold her. And when I hold her for about a minute or two or whatever, and she's like crying her guts out, then she settles, right? Because this is all transient, because this is just emotions. It's not telling me I don't love you less because you cry or because you're like doing your thing or whatever. It's just what you're feeling, right? So yeah, so powerful. And then tell us about the ex situation. How's it now?
Well, now, I mean, like I said, I just didn't even expect anything from him. I approached the situation different. I had to learn some good, healthy boundaries there, about what he could say to me, what he couldn't, when he could call me, how he could call me, stuff like that. So, and honestly, I just stopped feeding into the negativity. So I would just ignore that. It's like, I'm above, feeding back into this negative pattern. Like, let's talk about the kids. Let's keep it, simple and keep it moving, and I used to have a lot of frustrations around, his time with them because, unfortunately they're kind of a I don't want to say second tier. That's not the right word, but they're second on his list. Work is first, and he's got to make sure that he fulfills all his work duties, which I fully understand. But part of me is like, well, you also need to schedule your kids into your life as well. So I just realized that, I can't control what he does. And the only thing I can control is how I personally show up to that.
Yeah. So powerful, Julie. I mean, and that's the thing. Once you get out of the story, out of your own story, and feeding that dynamic, I always say people always attract their equal. Like when we're in a situation, there's some toxicity involved or whatever, we're playing a part in it. Like there's two people here, right? And it's so hard for, I guess, women specifically to understand because, of course, like, he's not showing up in the right way as a father, as an ex-husband, as whatever. And so that story, that external, I guess, orientation or focus perpetuates the same thing over and over again. And so when you in your body, you do your own work, you're like, not available for that anymore, not part of my story. You do you. And, there's some sort of like, I guess, graceful acceptance around the fact that it is what it is, right? And so once you change and set your own boundaries, everyone, in my experience and yours and with all the women that I work with, that just follows because you're just not available for that. And once you stop feeding that cycle, then there's nothing to feed on from the other person. And it's like, oh, nothing really changed. He's still the same guy, right? It just, I changed and how I approach things. So, so good, Julie. Well, thank you so much for, I think we're going to stop here. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we stop?
Let me think. The last thing would just be stick with it. Like, you're worth it. Your kids are worth it. Your heart is worth it. There are great men out there. You just have to become that great woman and they'll find you. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I love that. Thanks so much, Julie. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time and for your vulnerability as well. And as I said in the beginning, for your courage. I'm pretty sure that so many women will be listening and watching this and getting really inspired. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.